With the help of Hashem, we are learning PESACHIM Daf Kuv Gimel. We left off in a no less than a 7-way machloikis. There are 7 different opinions how one is going to make the seder of Kiddush Havdalah with the yayin, with the neir on Matzah Shabbos Kodesh, that is Yom Tov. So we're going to finish learning the final opinions, and we're going to speak a little bit more about the Gemara Paskening like Rava, that the Seder is going to be Yak Nahaz, Yayin Kiddush, Neir, Havdalah, and Zman. We're going to learn about the proper sequence on a Motzei Shabbos Kodesh that doesn't coincide with Yom Tov. Pashut, what comes first, the Psamim and the Neir? We have the Machloikis as we have it written in the Mishnayos and Masechta Brachas. Over there, both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel subscribe that Neir comes before Psamim. We actually know that we say Psamim before Ner, and it is over here in Pesachim Kuv Gimel that we have the Gemara clarifying that we have the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that the Machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is precisely about which one of the two comes first, Ner or Psamim. We'll speak about the Nigla of it. We'll speak perhaps a little bit about the Hasidus of this Machlekes. We're going to go on to learn.
Rabbi,
yes.
Did you say Rava? Isn't it Rav? That we Yak Nahaz, that we pass.
Oh, we're going to learn the Tosfos. It's Rav and Rav. Very good, Danny. Rav is the one that says Yak Nahaz, and the Gemara is going to say Hilchasek Rava, and Tosfos is going to ask Danny that why does the Gemara ever have to say Hilchasek Rava when there's a klal that every time Rav and Abaye argue by the side of the Yal Kigam, we always paskin like Rava. And the answer is exactly what you're saying, is that Rava really is opining in one detail like Rav, but there is a general machlokes. We'll review this between Rav and Shmuel, whether Kiddush comes first, whether Havdalah comes first. Okay, anyways, we'll come back to all this. We'll review it. We're going to go on learning about when a person benches, and after a meal, whether it is Shabbos, Yom Tov, where you had to make Kiddush, so you made a Boyer Pri Hagofen, whether it is in any Su'udah where you happen to drink wine, that whether you have to make a Boyer Pri Hagofen on the Koshel Bracha that one should use when you bench is really subject to our Machlokes. And we will be learning the Shita of Rav Ashi. We don't paskin like that. That since you made a Bracha on Yayin during the meal, and you knew that you're going to be benching Al HaKois, that Birchas HaMazon is not considered a hafsaka regarding that wine, and you need not make a new Boyer Pri Hagofen. And today, God willing, on the Kuv Gimel Amud Beis, we're going to learn the Tosfos that links this discussion with why is it that we make Boyer Pri Hagofens and all the Dalet Koises on the Seder, especially L'Shitas Rav Ashi, that is a lot more, he limits, he qualifies exactly what's considered the hefsek. So imagine, so if Birchas HaMazon is not considered the hefsek, then why would Magid be considered the hefsek? If Birchas HaMazon is not a hefsek, then why would Nirtza, why would Halal be a hefsek? We'll learn that Tosfos. We will also begin on Daf Kuv Gimel Amud Beis, the Pashete Nusach of Havdalah. We're learning such fundamental topics over here. Now, as we will learn throughout the sugya that will continue on Daf Kuv Dalid, the Torah writes the word Havdalah regarding 7 types of separations. And we will have the Shita of Rabbi Lazar Amar Rabbi Oishia, that when one recites the Havdalah, Motzei Shabbos, Motzei Yom Tov, you get to choose how many of those Havdalahs you mentioned, but you may never mention less than 3 Havdalahs, nor can you add to the 7, even though we find in other areas other Havdalahs, but you can only mention the ones in which we find a pasuk in the Torah that explicitly uses the word Havdalah between 2 different things. And Bachal, we're going to notice if you open up your Siddur, or if you remember Good Bar Baal Peh, we mention it appears to be 4 Havdalahs when we make Havdalah Motzei Shabbos. And that will be a problem, because like Bimanav Shach, either say the 3 or say the 7. Why 4? And that's going to lead us into a new sugya that will begin in the next year regarding the last Havdalah that we mentioned when we make the Havdalah prayer is not a 4th Havdalah, but there is a klal when it comes to a lengthy bracha that has a bracha in the beginning and a bracha at the end, that before we conclude the bracha, we should recapitulate me'ein the chasima at the end of the body of the text, as we'll explain. So the 4th one is not called a 4th. It's just making a statement that's going to coincide with the conclusion, the chasima. And a lot more of that, God willing, already will be in the next daf. Let us begin where we left off. We left off on daf Kuf Gimel. We're going to begin Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph at the end of the second line. Again, we have 7 different opinions. We began it yesterday. It all began 2 dots on that Kuf Beis Amud Beis, the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. Now, I know that we're speaking about 4 different brachas here. The 4 different brachas is when Motzei Shabbos going into Yom Tov is not the beginning of Yom Tov. In the beginning of Yom Tov, we also say a Shechiyanu, Zman. But let's focus even where we won't make a Shechiyanu. For example, when we are going into Shvi'ah Shel Pesach. So the 4 brachas that we will be making is a bracha on Yayin. We're going to make Kiddush. We're going to be making Havdalah. And we're going to be making a bracha over the Neir. And we already spoke out the Tosfos, the machlokes, Rashbam and Tosfos. Why don't we make the bracha of Psamim when we go from Shabbos into Yom Tov? Whether we're going to subscribe to the Shita of the Rashbam that holds that on Yom Tov we have the Neshama Yeseda. So there's no Ibud Neshama, there's no need to make Psamim. Tosfos argues with that. Tosfos says that the Simcha of Yom Tov itself, it is in the place of, it covers the consolement that we need for the neshama, that we remain connected to. Guys, we always have a godly neshama, but we learn this better in Hasidus. There are many levels to the neshama. You have really 5 levels to the neshama, which are generally categorized or divided into 2. You have the parts of the neshama that are able to go into us, which is milmata lamayla, nefesh, ruach, and neshama when we're zoicha. But the chaya and the yechida is completely beyond the person. And that's the pshat that on Shabbos we get the neshama yeseda, which means that we are consciously connected even to those levels of the neshama that are beyond us. And the question is, what happens on Yom Tov? Anyways, that's a nigla, that's the machlokes over here between the Rashbam and Tosfos, as we also will have in the Sechtas Be'ah. Now, the foundation of the machlokes is, let's focus on one thing. Kiddush or Havdalah, which one should come first? Now, on one hand, you would argue that first you make Havdalah, because you are leaving Shabbos, and then you're Mekadesh Shabbos. Comes along Rav and he says, no, Dafke Kiddush first and Havdalah second, and just repeating the words that we read in the Rashbam says that the Rav holds that if a person is going to right away make Havdalah, it's going to give the appearance that Kedusha, Shabbos, and Yom Tov, that greeting in a day of Kedusha is a burden. It's Kemasui. So you know what we do? We dafka make Kiddush first, and then we make Havdalah. So holds it up. Shmuel argues. Shmuel holds, no, you follow the Seder. Shabbos is ending. Havdalah is connected to the Yitzias HaShabbos. Yom Tov is beginning. Kiddush for Yom Tov is the beginning of Yom Tov. So you follow the chronological order. That is the foundation of the machlokes. And then there are other nuances of where do you put the yayin, where do you put the neir. Now let's begin on the second again, the end of the second line. Marta. Amazing. The name of an Amoira. Marta Omar Mishmei de Rabbi Yeshua, that the right Seder will be Nihak, Neir Yayin, Havdalah, and Kiddush. Let's read inside the Rashbam, in middle of the medium-sized lines under the Gemara, 9 lines under the Gemara, Nihak, Zot Rashbam, that the Tama Kidem Efarish Lekaman, that their Havdalah should come before Kiddush. That's number 1. In other words, here we are subscribing, he subscribes to the Shita of Shmuel. Now another detail, and therefore Neir should come first. Why? Because since Lefisha writes that this Shita wants Lite Yain Samuch, he wants to place the brach of wine juxtaposed to both Havdalah and to Kiddush. Why is that? Because both of them, both Kiddush and Havdalah, should be made over wine. Sheshneim niskenu ala yayin gavaldik. So therefore, Gavaldik, when you put the yayin, first based on Shmuel, Havdalah before Kiddush, we want to place the wine as close to both, so you place it in the middle. So you have Havdalah, yayin, and Kiddush. What about the Neir? So he says, beautiful, since Ma'od, Oimroi, Beloy, yayin, im ein loy kois, if a person doesn't have a cup Motzei Shabbos, so that the bracha on the Neir is mamish independent of making Havdalah. So we separate it. And all that finds expression by Nihak. So first is Neir, Ki'ilu. You can make it even without the kois. Oh, guys, I'm sorry. I think I read the wrong Rashbam and the wrong. I'm sorry. I jumped ahead of myself. Nihak. Nihak is Ner. I'm sorry. Ner Yain Abdullah and Kiddush. He holds the Rashbam that I read is on the next Shita. Nihak is Ner Yain. He follows, Marta follows the Shita of Shmuel that Havdalah has to come before Kiddush. And let's go with the same logic. Ner comes first because we want to have the Yayin as close as we could to the Kiddush. And also, as we just explained, that the Ner can come independent of Kiddush and independent of Havdalah. So to keep the Yayin as close as we could to the Kiddush, Havdalah comes before Kiddush, Ner Yayin, Havdalah, and Kiddush. Now, Shalach lei by the third line, Shalach lei avoid Shmuel Rebbe to Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Yelamdeinu Rabbeinu say that Havdalah's heich, Shalach lei, that Kach Amar Rabbi Shmuel, but Rabbi Yosi, in the name of his father, which is Rabbi Yosi, in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, Nahik. That is the Rashbam that we just read. Yes, you're right, Havdalah before Kiddush. But that was his Kiddush, that he wants to put wine, the Yayin, not closer to Kiddush than putting it in the beginning. No, more than that. Put the wine in between Havdalah and the Kiddush. Nate is the standalone. Now, again, the fundamentals, the fill-ins of Yayin and Ned, that's the way we'll word it. That's a very important detail. But the Yesoid of the Machlokes, which is why the Gemara mentions first the Machlokes between Rav and Shmuel, is Kiddush first or Havdalah first. Chronologically, Havdalah first. Rav holds it should not appear like a Masui. We don't want to get rid of Shabbos. First, at least bring in Yom Tov, and then make Havdalah on Shabbos. Oh. So the question is, at the end of the day, that's a good svara. That it should not appear like a masui. Why would you not make? Why would you not nihak? And he backs up. Now you're going out of the chronological order. Kiddush. You're not going out of the chronological order. You're making Havdalah before Kiddush. So Rashi spoke about it should not look like a masui. And now Amar Rab Chanina, Mashal de Rabbi Yeshua, he gave his reason. Why is Havdalah said before Kiddush? Mashal Rab Chananya. And again, it looks like you're making Shabbos look like a masui. Oh, good. So Mashal Melech Sheyotzef, a king who was visiting you, is leaving, and now you have the opportunity to express respect by accompanying the king. You also have at the same time a iparkois. We quoted this in the Rashbam, a duke that's coming in. So who are you going to be machabed first, the king or the duke? The king. So first Malavan HaMelech, and then Yoitzim Lekrasi Parkois. So this is the counter against the Sfara of Rav. You got to make Kiddush first. If you make Havdalah first, is Nira Kamasoi. No, not Nira Kamasoi. You have to be Machabed Shabbos. So therefore, first you make Havdalah. Saying Havdalah is part of Kavoid Shabbos. You are accompanying the king. And my Hava Allah. So Abaya says, now here Abaya is adding, as Rav is adding the Zman. Yak Zina, Yayin, Kiddush, Zman Ner Havdalah. Here we're going to have again the concept of Kiddush right before Havdalah. Rava says, Oichet Kiddush before Havdalah, but it's Yak Nahaz. And the halacha is like Rava, Yayin, Kiddush, Ner, Havdalah, and Zman. And here is where Tosfos says the third Tosfos, that why did the Gemara have to say V'hilchas Rava? Look inside Tosfos. Normally we know, right? We have this that every time there's a machlekes between Abaye and Rava, we always paskin like Rava, aside of Yal Kigam. So if it's a machlekes Abaye and Rava, Avada halach is like Rava. So that's the word. So Tosfos says no, that both Abaye and Rava, they are subscribing to Kiddush before Havdalah. Now really, Kiddush before Havdalah or Havdalah before Kiddush, that's a machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Maybe we would paskin like Shmuel. Now you can also say that normally Rav and Shmuel hilchas sekerav b'yisura. No, you can argue over here that halacha maybe should have been that Havdalah should be said first, and noch, as we just had the mashal of Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, that you have to first be malav the melech before you can receive the duke. So really, the Ilchas Rava is not the nuance between Rava and Abai. Of course, we pass like Rava. The nuance is that yes, we make Kiddush before we make Havdalah.
Also, there's the story where the father Shmuel asked Rebbe what the halacha was, right?
Correct.
That also went the other way.
That also went more. That's
right. That's even more reason why.
That's even more reason why we have to say Ilchas Rava. Very good. And guys, just to know that our minig, and there's many reasons behind it, is that when we make the bracha over Havdalah, over the Neir, so we'll be learning the sugya, the next daf, about, we had this in brachas, that since we say me'oirei, now me'oirei ha'esh refers to the various shades, colors in the fire. We'll speak about that al pi pnimius. But when do you see these colors more distinct? When you're using a torch, meaning when you're using more than one wick. But when we make Havdalah, in the beginning of Yom Tif, Yak Nahaz, we dafka don't put two wicks together. Like the Alter Rebbe says, you look at the Neiros Yom Tif. Now, I know there are many Neiros, but it's not a torch because the wicks are not intertwined. And there are many reasons for that. And we'll speak about that. We'll speak about that later, if we'll get to it. Let's move on, right? Okay. Says the Gemara. Now we're going to begin here with a series of stories that happened by various Amoraim, that they went to visit Rava and they noticed how Rava behaved and comments on it. Okay, here the first story is about Shabbos and Matzah Shabbos that does not coincide with Yom Tif. So we're not going about the Kiddush and the Havdalah. We're simply speaking here about a normal Matzah Shabbos Kodesh Havdalah. Says the Gemara Rafuna Bar Yehuda. Ikla lebei Rava. He went to visit Rava. He was there for over Shabbos. Aisulakami Moirub Samim. Matzah Shabbos Kodesh, you make Havdalah. You need to have both the bracha on the fire. You have to have a bracha on Psamim. Yeah, because there's an ibud neshama, vaid nefesh. And to be meishiv the nefesh, we smell something, because the koyach of reyach touches deeply, it touches the person's neshama. So says the Gemara that Baruch Rava Absamim Bereisha v'Hadar Amo'oir, which is taka the way we do it. And that's a big chiddush, because when you learn Mishnayos, it looks like everyone holds that first Neir and then Psamim. So Amar Lei, this is Rav Huna Bar Yehuda, tells his host, they both subscribe Moir Bereisha v'Hadar Psamim. And where do we have this machlokes? And Mishnayos, Chavre Masechta Brachos, Umahi the Tanan. Now there's another nuance that's not Negeya here, but just a chazer. When we learned brachas, there was another discussion, and that was that when there was a person that was eating shalosh shudas, and their meal went into Matzah Shabbos, and now you're going to bench. And yes, we learned in the last year that rule is not to make mitzvahs look like chavilois, that ein oimrim shtei kedushos al kois echad, if they're not related. Birchas Hamazon and Havdalah are not related. However, we also learned as mohatnish tapanish. If you don't have enough wine, then you will use the same cup. So that is the case of the Mishnah, that a person only has one cup of wine, and they have to both make a bracha ala kois, and they have to make Havdalah. So they're going to make everything together. So there, this machlokes of what comes first. So our version, as it's recorded in the Mishnah, Beishama Yoimrim Neir. Imagine, Umazin means Birchas Hamazon. Now, guys, we don't have to focus here for the Birchas Hamazon part. All we are focusing now is between Neir and Psamim, which one comes first. So Beishama says Neir Umazin, then Psamim, and then Havdalah. Beis Hillel says no, Neir Psamim, then Mazim, then Havdalah. Now we spoke out in brachas, why do they have each their own opinion? But the way we have this version, they both agree, guys, take a look. Both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, that Ner comes before Psamim. So let's take out Birchas Hamazon and a normal Matzah Shabbos Kodesh. You're making Havdalah. L'chayra Ner should come before Psamim. So he wondered, how did Rava flip the order? So Ani Rava Basreva Amar, yeah, I also learned that Mishnah. But you should know that the way it's recorded in brachas is only Rabbi Meir's opinion of what was the machlokes b'Shammai Beis Hillel. Avol Rabbi Yehuda Omer that lo nechluku b'Shammai Beis Hillel ala mazon shubatchila. Everyone holds hakert, that you begin with Birchas Hamazon. And this has to do, we spoke it out in brachas on the rule that ein mavir and ala mitzvahs. In other words, the moment you finish the meal, we are allowed to eat into a night as long as the meal began before Shkia. And we're going to learn more about this, I think, in Daf Kuf Dalet or in the next few dafim. That we don't, the whole sugya of Pleitis Mapel Mekadesh is only when we're going from Friday into Shabbos. When you are going from Shabbos into Mitzvah Shabbos, even on the Gemara, there's a discussion, we're going to pass it that you don't have to stop the meal at all. You can eat. So before Havdalah, before you bench, you can eat because you're part of the meal. When you determine to finish the meal, the first obligation upon you is Birchas Hamazon, which is why Rabbi Yehuda holds that everyone will hold based on the rule, the first mitzvah you got to keep, ein mavir and ala mitzvahs, that Birchas Hamazon comes first. Everyone agrees that the final bracha will be Havdalah, which is the way we make it nowadays, right? All of the, forget about hine keli shuasi. I'm speaking about really the brachas, right? We make Boider Pri Hagafen, that's what we do. Then we say Psamim, and then we say Meir, and then we do Havdalah. So Havdalah comes at the end. Al man nechlaku. There is a machlokes Beishamai and Beis, but this is the machlokes regarding.
Yaakov, mute yourself.
Regarding Moed and Psamim, that Beishamai says that Beishamai you have in Moed v'achar Psamim, that first you have to make the bracha over light, and as the Rishonim speak out, when you have in front of you a light and Psamim, which one do you have hana'ah from first? Same concept of Ein Mavir and Ala Mitzvahs. So Psamim, unless you have as a French nose can schmecken or a block away, you're going to have enough from the light. That comes first. So therefore, that's al pi nigla. So the light has to come first. Then when you bring the Psamim to your nose, then you're going to smell Psamim. No, Psamim b'achar kach moed. Why should the Psamim come first? Now that's a kasha. So the Ritva, just one of the many approaches holds, is that since the Psamim is to be Meshiv the Nefesh, because Shabbos left, so which one is closer to Shabbos? In other words, light, the first time that light came into the world is Motzoi Shabbos. So light is connected, Adam hit the two rocks together. We learned this before. When the first time he experienced dark? When did he experience dark, even though the Chet was before Shabbos, but he still had the 36 hours of the original light. So he only needed light after Shabbos left. No, it's the Moed that Itva says is connected to the Vach, to the week, to the darkness. Then the Sunim is connected to Shabbos leaving. So therefore, he understands, so explains that it's fun. Shitas Beis Hillel, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Fakert, Ein Mavir and Ala Mitzvahs, the one that comes first is Psamim. Oh, and Amar Rabbi Yechanan, I want you to know that, Rabbi Yehuda, I know we learned this column before, that generally because we were not able to descend to the depths of Rabbi Meir, we don't paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. And Beishamai Beisilel is not even a Mishnah. So therefore, Nahagu Ha'am Kebesilel, Va'aliv de Rabbi Yehuda. And that's exactly what the Rava did. And that's amazing because when we learn brachas, you learn a Mishnah and you become perplexed. Because you don't have, the Mishnah doesn't record such a shita. Okay, now Pnimius, there's a lot over here about which one should come first. This whole question of Sur Mira V'asei Toiv, and the Seder in the pasuk is Sur Mira and then V'asei Toiv, and that is taka the way it's going to be when Mashiach comes, and that is the shita of Beishamai, that first get rid of the dark. That's more, and after you get rid of the dark, then you can be machazik your soul. Now in Golos, we're not ready for that Seder. If you're going to first wait to get rid of the Sur Mirah, the whole approach of the Holy Baal Shem Tov is no, first do a mitzvah, Asei Toiv. It's interesting, I'm just connecting the Asei Toiv to smelling something pleasant. And then fight the darkness. Your good will fight the darkness. That can be a very beautiful understanding in this argument. Okay, that's story number one. Story number two. It's guys, these are dafim gold, 2 dots. Another story. Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba also had the schos to visit Ikla Lebei Rava. Now don't get confused. We're not speaking about Havdalah yet. Here, the way that Rashbam explains that from the Hemshech HaSipur, you understand that Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba spent Shabbos there. Now we're speaking about Kiddush Shabbos, Seudah Shabbos. So Chazio, so Rabbi Yaakov saw that as was that Rabba made the Baruch Berifia Gofen Akasa Kama, which is Kiddush. Now we're going to be learning the sugis of Kiddush soon on Daf Kuvav, about the Friday night, about the Kiddush of Shabbos day. But we got to make Kiddush, and you make a Berifia Gofen, and then you bench. You have to bench alakois. Right, when you have a zimun, he also made another boide priyagofen on the koishal bracha that he used for birchas hamazon, and then the ishtay he drank that cup. And what's the kasha now? This is Shabbos question. Why did you have to make another bracha boide priyagofen for the koishal bracha that you used at the end of the meal? Amar lei, so Rav Yaakov bar Abba asked Rav lama lach kulahai. You already made a bracha for the wine by Kiddush in the beginning of the meal. So to which Rava first responded, Amar lei, listen, that ki havin and beit Reish Galusa, when we would spend Shabbos in the house of the Reish Galusa, that's what they did, hachi avdinan, meaning we the guests would make not only Kiddush, but we would make a bracha, boire priyagofen, on the koishal bracha after we finish benching. So right away, Amar lei, so Rabbi Yaakov tells Rabba, no, don't compare apples and oranges. Tanach makes sense when you are in someone else's house, Beit Reish Galusa, meaning the hacha of it, taka, this is what you guys did correctly. You know why? Because the Suffolk Maisalon, when you are not in your own house, you don't know whether more wine will be brought for you. So when you finish drinking a cup, that's it. As far as you knew, that's the last cup of wine you're getting. Now that the take brought another cup of wine to the bench, so that's something you can argue that you did not have kavanah when you made the bracha on the first, that there's going to be a second.
So
but here,
benching, Rabbi, wouldn't you have to make a bracha on every cup of wine?
Many people bench wrongfully without using a koishal bracha, like myself sometimes. In other words, Lav Dafka, the Reish Galusa wasn't always the most fruma person. He was, he was the head of the government. And you don't know if you're sitting in his house, you don't know whether it's a practical thing. If you don't know whether they're going to bring more wine, there's more reason to make another bracha to shine.
I'm saying independent of benching. If you drank your first cup of wine, you don't know if you're getting a second one. Now you get a second
one. So we have to learn, listen, but then there are times that we say that when you made a bracha, you did it on the das of the balabayis. And therefore, if the balabayis knew that he's bringing out more wine, then you get to go on his coattail. And when it comes to benching, again, that's the thing that people are not meticulous. I'm talking to myself that even when there's only a zimun of 3, not 10, the Rebbe was medagdik to always make a bench ala kois. It's important, but not everyone does that. So when it comes to that, it's not part of the meal. That's part of the mitzvah to be mahad. There might not. You did not know whether there'll be a kais or not. You have to make a new bracha to shine. But over here, I'm your guest. You're the balabas. Come on. You know that you have more wine. You're going to bench on our kais the way you're supposed to. So therefore, vedatan ilave, you did have in mind when you made kiddush. You knew you're going to bench on our kais. So why did you not? Why did you have to make another bracha to shayna? Amalei. Now Rav responds, listen here. Ano avdi kitalmidei de Rav. I am following the shita of the students of Rav. What do we have? That Rav Beruna and Rav Hananel, which were talmidei de Rav. Have a yasa bisudasa, they were eating a meal. Look how special it was, and we're going to have many stories where great Amoraim were the waiters at the meals of Yeshiva Bachrim. When the Rebbe got married, the Frierdiker Rebbe put a towel over his shoulder and he was pouring out mashke. He was helping the young chevra. And that happens continuously over here. Who was waiting on them? Who was attending the Talmidei de Rav? Kom Aliyah Rav Yeva Sava. Now, Omrulei, so when the Talmidim finish the meal, they tell the waiter, Havlan v'nivrech. That's the source chevra of Rav Boisai Mirbalim Benchen. They did not begin benching, but they proclaimed Rabbi Simon Velam benching. That we have even in Shulchan Aruch. That's for sure. When you say Rabbi Simon Velam benching, that means that we were made hesach hadas from eating. That concluded the meal. And now what happened once is Labasoif Amrulay, they changed their mind. They didn't bench. And they tell their waiter, Rav Yeva Sava, Havlan v'nishtei, please give us more wine. Okay. So Amar Lahu, so Rav Yeva Sava told them, You guys are Talmidei de Rav. Let me tell you the shita of the Rav. Hachi Amar Rav, that Kivin the Amritu. The moment you say Havlon v'Nivrech, that's considered a halachic hefsek. That's called really a conclusion to the meal. You close the meal. And therefore, Istara, L'chul Mishte, you are not allowed to drink without making another bracha prior. Okay. And my tama, the asichu dataichu, because that's it. Your mind went away from the meal. So therefore, says Rava, that if Havlon v'Nivrech already demands a new bracha reshayna for the wine, is the chavade, the Havlon v'Nivrech and birchas hamazon, ein lecha interruption gedolah mizu, that you concluded your meal. Even though you knew you're going to drink more wine, that's where it's dissimilar. Because in the story, when they said Havlon v'Nivrech, they were not planning to drink more wine. Here, you know you're going to bench halakos. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's ended the meal. There's a mitzvah to do a birchas hamazon al kosher bracha, 100%. Make a new bracha rishayna. Now, I want you to know that this is subject to a machlokes, to a big machlokes. There are three opinions. Let's go. Ameimar, number one. Number two, Marzutra. Number three, Ravashi. That have a yosva b'seuda. This is not connected to Shabbos. Again, Shabbos you make kiddush. This is during the weekday. During the weekday, people have wine during the meal. The koi olayu Rav Acha b'rei de Rava. Rav Acha b'rei de Rava was a waiter, and he noticed that each one of these three was following a different approach regarding brachos over wine. Ameimar, beirach, or bareich, al kol kasa v'kasa. Every time he was served a cup of wine, he made a new bracha rishayna. Mar zutra, the second amoira, bareich akasa kamu, and then whatever he consumed in the wine in the meal, he didn't make another new boire pri hagafen. But when he benched al hakois at the end, koshel bracha, yes, va'akasa basra, like Talmidei de Rav, and like Rava. And Rav Ashi, no, here we go. Rav Ashi, barech hakasa kama v'su loy barech. He not only did not have to make a new bracha rishayna during the wine that he had during the meal, but even after benching chevra, he benched and he drank the wine without making a bracha rishayna. Now, Amar Lahu Rav Acha bar Rava, the Amoira that was serving them, he saw three great people doing differently, so he asked Anan Keman Nevad. And the way he would answer the question is, when you watch, when everyone is following a certain path, that's the path to follow, whether you understand it or not. But now you have three people to choose from. Now he wants to understand what are they arguing about? He asked them, explain your rationale, because now he's going to have to, the one that resonates the most with him will be the shita that he will follow. So each one explains their opinion. Ameimar explains that, why I made a bracha every single time I drank a new cup of wine, because Amar, and the Bach adds the words Ana, Nimlach Ana. Ameimar was the Yid, he drank a cup of wine and he said, Ganok, enough wine, moderation. And every time he drank, in his mind at that moment, that was all the wine he was going to drink. Then he changed his mind. So that's called a new drinking session. A new drinking session, a new bracha.
Rabbi, is that the reason we say different brachas by the Haggadah?
Oh, well, I'm going to go Tosfos. There you go, Tzvika. Wait, hold the thought. Tosfos speaks about it. I know that wrongfully, just to share that in yeshiva, I grew up, when the Rebbe made the big takana again, he reenacted the takana not to drink more than 4 cups during a fabrengen. So some people, the Oiber Chachamim, wrongfully would say, you drink 4, and you end the fabrengen, and then you start a new fabrengen, and you make another bracha, but then it's a new. Okay, weiter. Don't do that. The next opinion was, Mazutra says, no, another of the Talmidei de Rav. So a bracha, you have to make one bracha. I knew that I'm going to at least potentially drink more wine. It's all included. But again, birchas hamazon is considered a pure end of the meal. So now you have to make a new bracha. However, Rav Ashi Amar le'silchas akademi de Rav, which means you don't even have to make another bracha after benching. And he has a gevaldik karaya, because the hayom tov shchalias achar hashabbos chaver halkop. Now, how did we begin today's sugya or the end of yesterday? So we have to make kiddush and avdallah. Listen to what happens. Listen to what happens. So what did Rav say? We paskin like Rav with yak nahaz. Take out the zayin. We make yayin the first. We say kiddush. Now, guys, every Friday night when we taka say yayin before kiddush, you can't ask a kasha. Ooh, you said yayin and then you said kiddush. Isn't kiddush an interruption of the yayin? Of course not. Of course not. The kiddush is no hefsek at all. Then by the way, we had the whole machlokes and brachas, whether you make kiddush first or yayin first. But be that as it may, of course you don't have to. You said kiddush. You're saying kiddush al hayayin, so you drink the wine after kiddush. But here's the question: when you go yak naha, because Yom Tov falls out on Motzoi Shabbos Kodesh, so after the kiddush you're making neir. Neir is not connected to kiddush. You're making havdalah. Why isn't all of that an interruption to the yayin? Birchas Hamazon, Rav Ashi says, you hold is a interruption for the yayin that you made before the meal or during the meal. So why isn't Havdalah an interruption? Kiddush and Havdalah is not, they're not only, they're not related, they're opposites. Now, I know there's a counter, the Gemara is going to say it. So Rav Ashi, gebrengt araya, is that mendach? No, it's not called a hefsek. You're drinking.
What about kavanah, Rabbi? Don't we take that into consideration?
100%. And let's just read inside the Gemara. And says the Gemara Velohi that when Rav Ashi's logic, we're going to refute his logic because over there, meaning by Birchas Hamazon, okar date b'mishtaya. Don't compare. It's not just the words hefsek. Benching means, what is benching? You finish the meal. You concluded the meal. In other words, there's a hefsek issue, and then there's even just a havlon. The nivrach also ended the meal. But over here, by yak naha or by yak nahaz, you're holding the cup of wine. You know you have to drink the wine. Semach, kavana. No, kavana regarding will. Now, I just want to make something clear. When you bench, you also have kavana to drink the wine. But the benching itself, what's the kavanah of benching? The endict. V'achalta, v'savata, or, kezayis kebeya. And now I'm benching to thank you after the meal. Amazing. And obviously, Rav Ashi holds it's not true because of kavanah tzemach. Now here is where we have the very important places. At least it's getting late to learn a little shtickle. This is so yisoidistic. Look inside. The second place was under the Gemara. Rav Ashi borech akosa kama v'suli beirach. Afal gab the birchas hamazon to nekois. Lo yayim mevarech. Okay. Now I want to scoot down 5 lines into the Tosfos. The beginning of the lines. Im toimar. Am kein atzvika herst amay mivorchinen v'koisheni she'achar hagoda b'rifri hagofen. Afilu tehei hagoda to unakois. Ein tzorach levarech. Especially not according to Rav Ashi. Tosfos is on Rav Ashi. Do they have a hefsek? If benching is not a hefsek, so then l'choyre the Haggadah, the Magid, is also not a hefsek. So why do you have to make a new bracha? Which we make a bracha on every single one of the Dalet Koises. This is the beginning of this whole topic. We're learning just the beginning. From here until Shulchan Aruch, it's Moededik. So let's read Tosfos. Answers via Shleimer, the Haggadah. Now really, Tosfos is addressing another kasha. And that is, as an after benching, we make a way to Pri Hagofen on the Koshel Bracha of Birchas Hamazon. But that's the third cup. We also have the fourth cup that we say at the end of the after Hallel. So weiter, really, Tosfos is coming to answer, why do you have to make a bracha over there? So says Tosfos, the Haggadah, the Halela, which includes everything that we recite on the night of the Seder, from after benching until the end, Name Have Hefsik. And v'chule, you can just imagine that it's mamash simchas Torah on this whole topic. So the question of making 4 brachas on the night of the Seder is very much connected to our topic right here, which is a broader question. But this man, do you have to make a bracha every time you bench if during the meal you had wine, even during a weekday, and b'chlal every Shabbos and every Yom Tov where you have to make kiddush al hayayin? Let's go back inside the Gemara. We have to push and move on. Beautiful. And now the Gemara tells us a third story. Now, the third story is from the same Amoyra. So we have over here was Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba, and he had the schos of standing Shabbos Kodesh mit Rabba. And now, after he had this discussion with him during the day, so weiter kimot alav dulei, time for Abdullah came. Listen to what happened. Kom Shamo'eh, the attendant of Rava stands up on his own. Va'adlik avuka mishraga. There was already a fire, a candle. A candle is one wick. Comes along the attendant, the mishareis, and he takes a torch. Halachically, a torch is any wick that has in it, any wax or any keli that has in it 2 wicks or more that are intertwined. A torch. And that was there in order for Rava to be able to recite the Boirei Ma'orei Hoish. So Amar Lei, so here again, Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba is asking his host Rava, Lama lach kol ahai? I don't understand. There's already a candle. What was wrong with the candle? Lama lach kol ahai? Haman chashirago. Why does he need a torch? Now let me tell you the way some of the Rishonim understand what happened. What he really asked was, I know you have to have a torch. We learned this in Brachas already. We're up to PESACHIM. But in order to get a halachic torch, you have to add 1 wick. So why did you have to take a torch and light it from the one wick candle that was already lit? Why didn't you just take 1 candle, verstehst, and put it together? That is really what he asked. Okay? And I'm sorry, that is what Rava understood why he asked. Okay, that's what Rava understood that he was asking. It should have been enough to add 1 candle. And the emes is Ein Chanami. 100% okay. 100% okay. For that detail, why, instead of taking a torch, just add another candle? So Amalek, for that, Rava responded that Shama, this nuance, my Shama, my attendant did it on his own. And he took nothing wrong that he took we have Havdalah, beautiful candles. He didn't need to take a Havdalah candle from the candle. He could have added a Pashat candle and put the 2 wicks together, and here you have a torch. He did it on his own. Now the Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba, he was not asking that. He did not know b'chlal that you need to have a torch. He was really asking, why just make a bracha over 1 candle? And for that, that's a big difference. 1 wick or versus a torch. So when Rava says that my attendant did it on his own, he rejected that answer. He says for that, no. There's a difference between a 1 wick or versus a torch. And for sure, if his attendant took a torch, he must have heard it from you. Don't tell me that you never told him anything. Now, this detail, Taka, he heard from Rava. Amalei, so to which he says, that's what you meant. You were asking, why couldn't he just add 1 other candle? You're asking, B'chlal, why do you need to have a torch? Don't you know? That avuka lahavdallah, we had this above in PESACHIM. It's mitzvah min hamufchar, as we spoke out. Why is it mitzvah min hamufchar? We explained, because the nusach habracha is not ma'oir, but it's ma'oirei, because every candle, let's speak al pi Kabbalah, the different colors that are given, but sometimes we have the colors of white, red, and yellow. And white, red, and yellow, just to know what they are, that white is the color of chesed, and red is the color of gevura, and yellow is the color of malchus. As the Ramak says in his shot of colors, which is why intuitively all of the Meshachistan have yellow flags. That's just, but Malchus is yellow. And in order for us to clearly see those different colors, you need to have a bigger flame. And that's why you use a torch. Okay. And now let's go weiter. Let's at least begin weiter. So Pasach v'amar. So now that he lit, the Shammai lit a new torch. Now that we clarified that you need to have a torch. Now that in between the lines we clarified you don't have to have a standalone torch. You could have just added 1 wick. Now we're going to hear the nusach of Havdalah of Rava. So Pasach v'amar. Hamavdil ben kodesh l'choil, ben oir l'choshech, ben Yisrael la'amim, ben yoim hashvi l'sheshes yimei hamasa. So Rava enumerated 4 separations. And as the Gemara will clarify, no, Rava really only enumerated 3 separations, and the ending of Ben Yoim Hashvi L'Sheshes Yimei HaMaisa is not a new separation, but this is connected to klalim in how Chazal formulated the nusach of lengthy brachas, as we'll, God willing, learn on Kuf Daled, that you have to say me'ena chasima, right, before the chasima. But he counted four. You heard four things, right? So Amalei so weiter. So Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba is asking Rabba, Lamalach kulahai. I don't understand. And listen to this shita. The Ha'amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, that Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'choil zui hi havdolasi shel Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Guys, remember this for the next daf. Now let me add what many Rishonim add to this. He didn't say Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'choil, which is, by the way, what, let's say, a woman would say right after Shabbos before she does malachas. As we normally, we're in shul, we daven, we say Abdullah in Shemana Esrei. No, really, you have to make a bracha. And we learned the klal that there's no bracha without Shema Malchus. So we're going to follow the approach that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, his Abdullah was Baruch Atar Hashem Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'choil. That's it. So he only made, there was no ending to the bracha. There was nothing other than one Havdalah, one separation. So why did you have to say three or four? So Amalei, to which Rava responded, I hear Rebbe's Havdalah, but Allah, Kosvidali, I hold like the Amar guys. This is the Yisoid for the next daf. The Amar Rabbi Lazar, Amar Rabbi Shaya. I want you to know that we have in the Torah explicitly 7 times where it says the word Havdalah between two items. And how important it is that when we're living in a world that some of it is completely mishuga, that people are trying to take away havdalos, and that brings about the churban in the world. Like Begashmis, you have the land and you have the sea. And thank God that there is a line in the sand that God drew that says Atkan the sea and Mekan Behelach is land. Because if you take away that havdalah, what will happen? You're going to have a churban, you're going to have a mabul. In other words, Havdalah is fundamental to life. Chesed and Gevura. This is the healthy Gevura. Now, the Torah speaks about 7 Havdalahs. However, says Rabbi Zajac Shaya, that when you say Havdalah, you have options. It's the way they would daven the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. How many psukim and buchuli. Now we have already a machzir. So if you want, you can give any number you want, but there's a limit. That hapoiches, that if you want to make the shortest Havdalah, whoever heard the Dargah making Havdalah, it's Aliyah Megillah mit Allah Negunim. Imagine if Danny would make Havdalah with 7 Havdalahs, guys, it would take another hour. Oh, so you want to make it short, but it's a helftanish. Hapoiches, leivches Megillah. You may not mention less than 3 separations, not like Rebbe, that only mentioned the separation of Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'choil. And likewise, even though we know that in creation there are many more than 7 separations, but when you articulate that in your Havdalah, well, Yosef al Zayin, and as we learned the foundation of Sefer Yetzirah, that we have the Shalosh Imois, Aleph Mem Shin, and we have the 7 Kefulois, right? Beis Gimel Dalet Chav Pei Reish Tav Beget Kapoides, however else you pronounce it. And Taket's double letters. Double letters is the concept of Havdalah. So we have a 3 and we have a 7. You got to not less than 3, not more than 7. Now, the problem is if it's not less than 3 and not more than 7, Rava's Nusach, which is, by the way, exactly the way we say it, is Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'choil is number 1. Ben Oy l'choshech is number 2. Ben Yisrael la'amim has to number 3. And l'choira, ben Yoyim hashvi l'shesh tzvi amasa, right before the Baruch Hashem, is number 4. So Amar Lei, so Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba is not happy. I don't know if Rav invited him again. Everything he did, what they got kashas. Daf Kuf Dalet, v'hamar, but you master loitula so Amar and v'loy sheva. And who cares? So look inside the first Rashbam. That's a problem because when you read Rabbi Lazar, it sounds like you have an option. Anywhere between 3 and 7. Says the Rashbam, no. The Arba Amar, you said 4. Umar Isa. Like why 4? Why not 5? Mimanavshach, says the Rashbam. That was the kasha of the guest. If you wanted to say the minimum, the minimalistic prayer, Havdalah, is Dayecha Begimel. Only mention 3. If you want to make a lengthy Havdalah, so then why did you stop by 4? Then you should have said all 7. So Amalei. So Amalei, Rava responds to Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba, the second line, Ibra. The emes is, you didn't know, you don't verstehst nicht. That ben yoim hashvi l'sheshes yemei hamaseh is not another Havdalah, as we'll learn a lot more in the next daf, but really it's me'ein hachasimahi. And now we're going to learn, again, brachas were formulated b'chlal by Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. And as the Rambam points out, that they were not only Chachamim, but they were Nevi'im. And that's why we're so careful. And we say that Kol HaMishana Mimadbeah Shotava Chachamim, that if you make any deviance in the exact formulation of the sages, your bracha is invalid. So they're klalim. And as we'll be learning, that we have shorter brachas and then we have lengthy brachas. When you have a lengthy bracha, so you have a beginning, you have a body, and then you have the Baruch Atah Hashem. In those lengthy brachas, before you say Baruch Atah Hashem, open up your Shemona Esrei in your mind, or better in the city, you'll see it's mamish that way. That right before you say the concluding Baruch Atah Hashem, you give us a synopsis, but it has to be, according to the Shita, me'ein to the actual words that come after the Baruch Atah Hashem. It has to be me'ein achasimehi. So how do we conclude Abdullah Baruch Atah Hashem? Chevra hamavdil ben kodesh l'choil. So me'ein hamavdil ben kodesh l'choil is to say that you, God Almighty, you made a separation between the seventh day and the 6 days of action. A lot more to be continued. Chevra afreilichem purim.
Afreilichem purim, yesher koyach.
Rabbi Gavaldik, what a way to start the day.
Oh, great. And at 8 o'clock, as balabatim. Okay, Chevra, whoever didn't say Shema, if it's not too late,
but whatever.
Good.
I understand how it's Me'ena Chasima, but
we'll speak about it more next daf.
yeah, all right.
What time is next daf, Rabbi?
So I think like this. Let's learn Sunday, maybe 10 minutes late, maybe. Monday we'll learn double daf. I know it's
9:10. What is on our time?
Sunday we'll learn. If not, Allah send it. If not, 6:10.
6:10. Oh, that's it. Sunday.
Maybe we'll start on time and we'll learn a lot onto Kuvav, because we're going to learn Kuvav, and then we'll learn on Monday. I'll try to learn Monday. Kuvav.
Sunday double daf and Monday double daf?
Yeah, Sunday we have 2 hours. Monday we have 1 hour. If we learn enough Sunday, then Monday we'll only have to add a few minutes. Again, 10 minutes and we'll get to daf. All right.